Well, you can't have a military parade unless you have a well-funded military, and the United States Senate made sure that that was what Donald Trump was going to get. Donald Trump asked for a lot of money, and he got a lot of money. The U.S. military budget, the Senate backed a defense policy bill pumping $700 billion into the military. Here's a little breakdown because I'm terrible with numbers. Approved by the Armed Services Committee by a 27-0 vote in late June, the overall Senate bill provides $604 billion for core Pentagon operations, such as buying weapons and paying troops, and another $60 billion for wartime missions in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and elsewhere. Trump's budget request sought $603 billion for basic functions and $65 billion for overseas missions, so they shortchanged them $28 billion. But what's $28 billion when you don't have a parade yet? Wait till you see next year's request. This is, what struck me about this, listen, these bills happen all the time. They're very, very contentious most of the time. This year's it wasn't 27-0 in the Armed Service Committee. And I think this is the type of thing that members of Congress don't like voting against because it can be used against you on the campaign trail. And point of fact, this money is necessary to keep the military going. What isn't necessary is the second part of the number, which is all those missions, and that's another story entirely. But in this argument that the Republicans are making about health care, they're saying that single-payer health care is the wrong way for America to go. This is unchecked, single-payer, $700 billion of expenditure. This is single-payer. This is what it looks like. So we can pay for our military and our defense in a single-payer kind of way. We can damn well do it for health care. If the right to defend your country is a right that we're all born with, so too is the right to remain healthy throughout our lives.
They're both to keep us alive.
Right.
They're both to keep us alive, but there is a significant amount of waste in the military, and it was something that Trump criticized when he was campaigning, something that he claimed that he was going to stop when he was campaigning, but he is only adding to that waste. Of course, he wants to do that military parade, which would take taxpayer money. Right. So that's an example of waste. Our taxpayer money shouldn't go to that, especially when people in Congress and the president himself keep making arguments against universal health care. And every once in a while, of course, the topic of Social Security comes up and, well, how is it gonna remain solvent? How are we gonna do it? How are we gonna be able to make these Social Security payments? How about you don't spend an additional $700 billion on the military, which is incredibly wasteful. So look, why do I think it's wasteful? A lot of you already know that money goes to private contractors, when in reality, we don't need to pay these exorbitant fees to these contractors to get things done in the Pentagon. But just last December, if you guys can remember, okay, I didn't mean to rhyme there. The Washington Post.
Could have said November.
Last December, the Washington Post published an incredible piece regarding the Pentagon and how they tried to cover up a study that showed $125 billion in waste, okay? So this study, please go back and read it, it's incredible. Pentagon buries evidence of $125 billion in bureaucratic waste. So this study is done, and the Defense Department could have saved this money by actually looking at the results and doing something to cut the waste, cut the bureaucracy. There's obviously money going to things that we don't need in the military anymore. And instead of doing that, the Pentagon realized, oh wait, if this becomes public, then Congress is much less likely to increase funding to the Defense Department. And so let's just bury it, pretend like it doesn't exist, and continue on with this unnecessary waste. Okay. In that same piece, Trump is quoted as saying he's gonna stop it, right? He's gonna come in, oh, it's wasteful, look at what the Obama administration has done, they should have done something about this. He's supposedly gonna do something about it. He gets elected into office, and then what does he call for? More funding to the Defense Department, instead of doing what so-called fiscal conservatives claim that they wanna do, which is cut spending and cut waste in these specific departments. Anyway, it's just frustrating. We pay taxes so our government can actually take care of us, and they do the exact opposite. They fearmonger about Iran, completely unnecessary. We got into the details of the Iran deal yesterday and how they are complying. There's no reason to escalate tensions tensions with them, the fear-mongering about North Korea, all this stuff is going on, or the escalation of conflict with North Korea through Trump's rhetoric. That's all being done on purpose because they want more money for these private contractors, and that's it. Who cares about your Social Security? Who cares that you've been paying into it your entire life? Who cares about your health insurance and your health care coverage? Who cares about, affordable housing and making sure that people aren't living on the streets? We got to fund the military because these private contractors got to make money. That's where our taxpayer money goes to.
But the VA, there's no talk about the VA here. And again, this is a blanket bill. It's unfettered. It's untouched by amendments that could have talked about North Korea. There's nothing in here about the ban on transgender in the military. So I think that's probably a good thing. Though the Appropriations Committee is going to get this, and they're going to talk about where the money is going to go. But there's no talk about the VA, and that to me is that's one thing that's glaring. And Trump talked about it on the campaign trail the entire time.
You know how he works. But this is what always sticks out to me, and I've said it a few times already. Mick Mulvaney, months into the administration, when he was pitching their budget and saying things he wants to cut, when he was slashing everything, when it went down to the Meals on Wheels, that was one of the headlines that made the Meals on Wheels thing that he was ready to cut because no one really needs that. There was one line he said where he said, "I can't force a construction worker in Ohio that has nothing to do with this single mother's her entitlements or her children's education. I can't make him pay taxes or his tax money to go to her because F her," right? But then I can make everyone who's disagreeing with these wars we keep starting, or disagrees with the waste that we do in building more war machines and funding more war companies to do these things. I can force you to do that. And he said it openly. I said, why can you force me to do that? What if I raise my hand and say, no, I don't want to fund your wars anymore. No, I don't want to fund your friends' companies anymore. I don't have that say anymore. Yeah. But that Ohio worker, that construction worker has all the right to say, you know what? F that mother in Kansas. Screw her, I don't care. I don't want money going to her. Why does it work that way?
And by the way, this is a perfect, illustration of a point that keeps coming up on the show, where while the government takes our taxpayer money and uses it toward this type of waste, right, to make private contractors wealthy, they distract us by attacking that mother living in poverty. They distract us by talking about, oh, the others, they're trying to come into the country and take your resources. They distract us with the wall and Mexicans and Muslims and black people. They distract us and try to get us to attack one another while behind the scenes, this kind of story, I mean, sure, major news outlets are covering it, which is good. But do you think that this is a topic of discussion among most Americans? Hell no, it's not. Because this is not the kind of story that gets talked about over and over again in the media. Charlottesville, I understand, you should talk about it. But this is the kind of stuff that really goes on that Americans should be outraged about.
If you like this video, you'll love the whole TYT network. Check it out at tytnetwork.com/join.